Do you believe that Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever's star rookie, has found herself at the center of controversy in the WNBA? It's not for her jaw-dropping three-pointers or electrifying playstyle, but for the alarming number of flagrant fouls she has endured. And you won't believe why. Reports show that Clark alone has suffered 17% of all flagrant fouls in the league this season, a statistic that raises serious questions about officiating and fairness. But here's the real kicker. WNBA referees seem to be doing absolutely nothing about it. When a star player is repeatedly targeted with dangerous fouls, you'd expect the league to step in, right? Well, that hasn't happened. Instead, there's been a consistent blind eye turned toward the brutality Clark faces on the court. And make no mistake, this isn't just about basketball. This goes way deeper than that. Wait until you hear this part. Why are the refs ignoring the fouls against Caitlin Clark? At first glance, you might think, well, basketball is a physical sport. Players get fouled all the time. That's true. But when one player is absorbing nearly a fifth of all flagrant fouls in the entire league, despite playing in only a fraction of the total games, it's no longer just about physicality. Let's talk about Chennedy Carter and DeJounte Carrington, two players whose fouls on Clark have become infamous.
New reaction after this controversial foul on Caitlin Clark.
Unnecessary.
Clark's Indiana Fever taking on the Chicago Sky on Saturday. The Sky's Chennedy Carter hitting a shot, then heading over to Clark and shoulder checking her. The refs called it a common foul, but the league yesterday.
Carter's brutal shoulder check on Clark was initially brushed off as an away from the play foul, only to be upgraded to a flagrant one after fan outrage forced a second look. And what about Carrington? The footage doesn't lie. Clark has been slammed, shoved, and outright assaulted on the court. Yet the referees seem reluctant to hand out the same punishments they would for similar fouls committed against other players. That's where things take a wild turn. And that brings us to an uncomfortable question. Is the WNBA enforcing a racial double standard? There's an undeniable political undercurrent in women's basketball, and Caitlin Clark has unwillingly become the face of it. The fact that she's a white player dominating in a league where the majority of players are black has sparked divisive conversations, particularly when it comes to how fouls against her are handled or ignored. Let's be brutally honest. If the roles were reversed, if a white player had body-checked a black rookie star the way Carter did to Clark, the outrage would be deafening. The league would have immediately cracked down, suspensions would have been issued, and analysts would be discussing the implications of targeting a promising young talent. But because Clark is white, the silence from the WNBA is deafening. So what does this mean? Does the league find it acceptable for a white player to be brutalized on the court as long as it's a black player doing it? Because that's exactly what it looks like. Clark is getting hit harder, more often, and the league is choosing to look away. If the referees were doing their jobs correctly, this wouldn't even be a discussion. But instead of enforcing the rules fairly, they're allowing Clark to be a punching bag every single game. They see the fouls, they hear the complaints, yet they refuse to act. The WNBA is sending a dangerous message. Certain players will be protected, while others, like Caitlin Clark, are fair game. The bias in officiating is painfully obvious, and fans are noticing. The NBA would never let this happen to one of their rising stars. But in the WNBA, different story. Caitlin Clark isn't just another rookie. She's the most watched player in the WNBA. Millions are tuning in because of her, and yet the league is failing to protect its most valuable asset. The referee's blatant refusal to call obvious fouls is a black mark on the WNBA's integrity. If this continues, it's only a matter of time before Clark or another player suffers a serious injury due to unchecked aggression. So here's the bottom line. This isn't basketball anymore. It's politics. And until the league stops playing favorites and starts officiating fairly, the WNBA's credibility will continue to crumble. You don't have to be a Caitlin Clark superfan to see what's going on here. The numbers don't lie, and neither do the clips of her getting knocked down game after game without the refs stepping in. Fans across social media have called out the blatant bias, and even mainstream sports analysts are starting to take notice. Think about this. When Chennedy Carter body-checked Clark with no attempt to play the ball, it wasn't just an aggressive play, it was a statement. And the fact that the refs initially ignored it, that was a louder statement. It told the rest of the league, you can do this to Clark and we won't do a thing about it. And it's not just Carter. We've seen Angel Reese, Dijonai Carrington, Diamond DeShields, all players who seem to take extra delight in making Clark's life miserable on the court. And every single time, the officiating is inconsistent at best, complicit at worst. But the WNBA is making a huge mistake if they think they can sweep this under the rug. Fans are already turning on the league, pointing out the hypocrisy in how Clark is treated compared to other players. And the worst part? It's not just affecting Clark, it's damaging the league's credibility as a whole. Let's be real. Caitlin Clark is the biggest thing to happen to the WNBA in years. Her games bring in record-breaking viewership, her jersey sales are through the roof, and every major sports network is covering her every move. Yet instead of embracing the biggest cash cow the league has ever had, the WNBA seems determined to let her get battered on the court. Why? Maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's resentment. Maybe it's the fact that a white player is getting more attention than some veterans who feel they should be the face of the league. Whatever the reason, the WNBA is biting the hand that feeds them. Because here's the truth. If Caitlin Clark gets seriously injured due to the referee's negligence, the entire league will suffer. Viewership will drop, sponsors will back out, and casual fans, the ones the WNBA desperately needs, will tune out for good. And don't be surprised if Clark decides she's had enough. If the league refuses to protect her, what's stopping her from taking her talents overseas? There are European and Middle Eastern leagues that would gladly pay her more, protect her better, and treat her like the star she is. At the end of the day, the WNBA has a choice to make. They can either start officiating the game fairly, ensuring that Clark and every other player is protected equally, or they keep letting corrupt referees turn a blind eye, driving away fans, sponsors, and eventually Clark herself. Right now, it looks like they're leaning toward option 2. But if the league keeps pushing Clark around, they might not like what happens next. Because here's the thing, Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA, but the WNBA desperately needs Caitlin Clark. And if they don't wake up soon, they're going to learn that lesson the hard way. Just like Angel Reese can flex all she wants, but at the end of the day, she will never be Caitlin Clark. Not when she's out here bricking wide open layups while Clark is draining logo threes like it's target practice. Reese thrives on drama, but she's not backing it up where it matters, on the scoreboard. She might have her little fan base hyping her up, but the numbers don't lie. Clark is the one breaking records. Clark is the one drawing millions of viewers, and Clark is the one keeping the WNBA relevant. Meanwhile, Reese is too busy missing point-blank shots and then acting like she runs the league. How are you going to talk trash when you can't even hit a basic layup? Maybe instead of stirring up beef, she should be in the gym fixing that weak finishing ability. Caitlin Clark has been putting in serious work in the gym, and it shows. She's stronger, tougher, and more resilient than ever. No longer the rookie some WNBA players thought they could bully. They tried to break her, but all they did was build a monster. And now, the WNBA should be terrified. Clark isn't just absorbing hits anymore. She's giving them back. She's moving through contact, finishing stronger at the rim, and still draining those deep threes with insane accuracy. But the real nightmare for the league? Indiana Fever just got reinforcements. With Sophie Cunningham and other gritty veterans joining the squad, those so-called enforcers who thought they could rough up Clark are in for a rude awakening. Cunningham is the definition of a scrappy, no-nonsense player. She's not letting anyone get away with cheap shots on Clark anymore. So if certain WNBA players want to keep playing dirty, they better be ready for the consequences. Because this time, it won't be Clark hitting the floor, it'll be them. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more updates.